Quick, what is every man's favorite muscle group to work? Well, of course, that's the chest muscle. But did you know that the majority of exercises are working this muscle out incorrectly? You want to know how to do it right? Easy. Look to science. The pectoralis major, or the chest muscle. Today on the Personal Edge Fitness Podcast.
Welcome to the Personal Edge Fitness Podcast
with Garrett Williamson.
Health, wellness, exercise, nutrition, and a whole lot more. Got questions? Call us and leave a message at 251-278-EDGE or message us at Personal Edge Fitness on Facebook and Instagram, at Team PE on Twitter, or personaledgefitness.com.
Talking today, continuing on our series of talking about different muscle groups, and we're talking today about the largest muscle in the upper body on the front side of the upper body, which is the pectoralis major, or what we commonly know as the chest muscle. Now, I said in the intro there that that's every man's favorite muscle to work, and that's what I've commonly found after 29 years of personal training. I don't find it difficult to get guys, especially, to work out the pectoralis major. It's still one of those that falls within the beach workout muscles. I'm not sure where all of it stems from. Of course, the look is important, and I'm sure that has a lot to do with it. As I've said many times on the podcast, that vanity is my favorite sin. That's one big reason why I think that that's a favorite muscle. But also, I think a lot of it begins, at least in the U.S., it begins in high school and middle school when we first get into the weight room, and a judgment of strength and a measurement actually of sometimes just pure masculinity is what do you bench? We even see that in movies. I think, in fact, in Good Will Hunting, Robin Williams is talking to the character, Matt Damon's character, and they're talking about they both work out. And the first thing that one of them asks the other is, what do you bench? We see that quite often. I guess that's where the importance of working out the pectoralis major actually comes from. But today we're going to talk about what that muscle is. We're also going to talk about the functions of it. But more importantly, we're going to talk about how to work it out correctly. In fact, the technique we're going to use is actually good for pretty well any muscle group. The science behind it will help you in developing pretty well any muscle. And if you have a particular muscle that you're having trouble developing and your problem is in the workout, not in your nutrition, your caloric intake, or the protein intake, which I've talked about before, then I think we can fix part of that just by, like I say, looking at science. So let's start off talking basically about where the muscle is. And before we get into that, I want to tell you that if you have any questions about this show or any others, or have any questions in general about health, fitness, and nutrition, you can reach us at Garrett@personaledgefitness.com. You can contact me, number here in Mobile at 251-341-0927. Or you can reach out to us on Facebook or, of course, our webpage, which is personaledgefitness.com. Now, the pectoralis major it's a superficial muscle. And I've talked about this before, about the difference between superficial muscles and deep muscles. Now, superficial muscle is, I like to describe it as one that you can touch. It's on the surface. So if you reach up just below your clavicle, just below your collarbone, and you press right there, that is the top of the pectoralis major. And it takes up an area that goes all the way basically to the edge of your armpit and then down as far as your sternum, the base of your sternum. And those are actually your pectoralis majors. They're located under the breast, of course, and you have two different muscles there. You've got a pectoralis major and you've got a pectoralis minor, and we'll talk a little bit about that muscle too. But I'm going to give you the science description of this, then the anterior surface of the thoracic cage. In other words, they're on top of your thoracic cage, is basically your rib cage on top of that, and the opposing muscle are the rhomboids, a little bit of the trapezius, and the latissimus dorsi. Those are on the back side. Now, the reason I always bring up opposing muscles is because if you have a muscle pull, it's usually a result of an imbalance, a weaker muscle with an opposing stronger muscle. So it's very important when you're working your chest to keep your back in shape. In a few minutes, I'll tell you why I'm bringing that up, though. I've got an incident of a client that's seeing the challenges of having an imbalance, and we're actually trying to fix that right now. So what does that muscle do? Well, we think of exercises that we do with it, and we think of that muscle actually pushing things away, because bench press or press moves are what we think of when we think of working the chest. But The pectoralis major, which again starts at the top of the clavicle, spreads out to, it actually attaches to part of your arm and then goes down deep at the sternum. That muscle's main job is actually adducting or adduction or internal rotation of the arm. In other words, bringing your arm in and also doing a slight rotation, but mainly bringing your arm in. Now we think of it as pushing your hands away, like in a bench press or a chest press, but that adduction is extremely important in understanding not only the function of the chest, but understanding how to work it out effectively. Now it also, it pulls that shoulder joint in too. Pretty much a concave move if you try to stretch out your scapular, your back muscles by bringing your shoulders together, almost like you're going to do a hug. Bringing those shoulders together, pectoralis major controls that. But let me tell you what I mean by the adduction of the arm. Now that's a word that you've probably recognized in fitness, especially if you've seen the adduction and abduction machines, the inner and outer thigh machines. One of them's adduction, one of them's abduction. Most people get them confused, and I can understand that. I mean, the words themselves are very close. In fact, they're one letter off. With the adduction, which is ADD, when I'm saying DD, I'm saying dog, ADD, duction, is when you're actually doing the inner thigh movement, bringing your legs together. That's working the inner thigh. AB, B as in boy. Abduction movement is actually when you're moving your legs away. You're doing the outer thigh machine. That's the abduction machine. So when we're talking about adduction, ADD, dog, we're talking about bringing in the adduction with which is the motion that the chest controls with the arm. We're talking about bringing that arm in. And I'll give you a little tip. If you ever need to know the difference between abduction and adduction, think of ADD as in addition, subtraction, this kind of thing. ADD, adduction. Usually when you're doing adduction, you're adding something to the body. In other words, you're taking an arm and pulling it into the body. When you're doing an inner thigh machine, you're bringing the knees together. You're bringing everything in to the center point of the body. And I always think of adding something to the body, ADD, adduction. But that motion, again, it's significant to know that, and understanding these muscles and the way I describe them is very important about making your workouts effective. Now, I mentioned earlier that I was going to talk a little bit about the pectoralis minor. Now, it is a minor muscle. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it because it works in conjunction with the pectoralis major. There's a reason why I bring it up now, because we're talking so much about adduction, because of the function of the pectoralis minor. Now, the pectoralis minor is a deep muscle. Now, I was talking about superficial earlier. It means that you could actually, quote unquote, touch it. You can't touch it. Of course, there's skin there. But as you push just below your clavicle and north of your sternum and east-west of your armpit, you're going to be touching the pectoralis major. But underneath, if you were to push your hand close to your armpit, actually between the front part of your deltoid, your shoulder, and to about midway across that pectoralis major, just south of the clavicle, that would be the space where your pectoralis minor is. But it's not superficial, it's underneath that pectoralis major, which is what makes it a deep muscle. But back to the adduction, the job of the pectoralis minor is to draw that shoulder in. It actually stabilizes the scapula by drawing it in. And you'll feel this sometimes if you're doing a bench press. If you're trying to get that last effort on the bench press, and maybe you've got the rack for the bench press set a little too high. Maybe you're reaching up to it and you bring those shoulders together to get that last inch or so, lifting it up to put it back on the rack. That motion, that drawing those shoulders in, the opposite of what we think of as good posture, that's the job of the pectoralis minor. Now, we're not going to go too deep into that because it works in conjunction with the pectoralis major. So these exercises and the different things that the pectoralis major does, just think of the minor working in conjunction with it as part of it. We won't separate the two. Now, the reason I was talking in the beginning about how you can use science to train the muscle better, in this case, I am talking about the way the fibers run. Now, the fibers run in that pectoralis major, especially the bottom part of it, and in the pectoralis minor, they kind of run east-west, which controls that movement of adducting that arm, bringing the arm in. And you typically want to work the muscle in line with the muscle fibers. It's like not wanting to go against the grain, I think would probably be the easiest way to explain that. So if you work in the motion of the fibers, in the motion of the fiber direction, you're going to have a much, much, much better results, much more effective workout. Now, the muscle fibers do run generally east-west, but the upper part of the chest, the upper part of the pectoralis major that connects actually to the bone in the upper arm. It connects there, and that upper part, there's one part that doesn't run directly east-west. It actually runs more of a northeast type of direction. Now, of course, we're not looking at north, south, east, west in your body, but if you can imagine connecting the muscle just below your shoulder joint and then running it from there up to your clavicle, that's the direction, that's where that top of that muscle connects, and that's the direction of those fibers, which is very different than the majority of the pectoralis major that are actually running almost a true, in the middle part of the chest, it runs more of a true east-west, and believe it or not, the bottom part of the chest runs more of a east to southeast, I guess you'd say, kind of a downward direction of those fibers. So as you go from top to bottom, you've got kind of an angled up, and then you've got straight across, then you've got kind of an angled down. It's probably the best way to describe that. But that's the direction of those fibers. So when you're training it, you want to look for exercises that somewhat replicate that. Now, I don't mean to badmouth the bench press. I still think it's a great overall chest exercise. And actually, it's a great overall chest exercise. It works the shoulders, works the triceps. You get quite a bit of motion in that exercise. And actually, when you're breaking down and thinking about a simple full body workout where you're going to grab big muscle movers with multiple muscles involved, like a chest press or a pull-up or a lat pull-down, you're going to look for a squat. Those are exercises that use a combination of muscles to actually conduct the exercise. But when it comes to being very specific about training a muscle, you look to those fibers and look for motions that replicate those movements. Now, I have always used as a rule of thumb, since the chest's main job is to adduct the arm, bring the arm in, that I'm looking for an exercise that most closely replicates bringing the arm in and putting together a chest workout. It's really fantastic if you're working from trying to go to complete failure. You're going to start with something that brings that arm in, like a fly move. And you're going to find out that it's very effective about working the chest. You fail on it quicker than you would with a press move. And why is that? Well, in a fly move, fly motion like a cable fly or even a dumbbell fly, your chest is pretty well handling 99.9% of the work. Your triceps really aren't involved because they're not extending the arm. Your shoulder's not involved because of the direction that we're going. It's somewhat involved, but it's more or less not involved as much as like in a press move. So the chest doesn't have a lot of help in that exercise. And if we're really taking the muscle failure, we don't want a lot of help with it. We want the first exercise, we want to test that muscle and try to put all the pressure just on that muscle. So when you're designing your chest workout program, the first thing I would start with is a fly motion. I would put that at the beginning of your workout. If you're going to do a few different exercises, even if you're just doing one exercise for the chest, it is the more pure exercise. And then I like to put together not only a primary moving exercise like the fly, the primary mover being nothing. I'm trying to get nothing but the chest involved there. And when I get to where I can't, I take that almost to failure. Well, I know if I could give my chest a little bit of help, I know I could take it a little farther. I could break down the muscle even more, which would enhance my gains. And so after I've done a fly move, I'm going to move to a press move. I'm going to use my shoulders and my triceps to help take the muscle to failure. Now remember, I was saying that the chest muscle adducts the arm. It draws that arm in. Well, you don't think of that arm drawing in when you're doing a bench press, but actually it is. Look at the pit of your elbow. When you start a bench press, look at where the pit of the elbow is. It's kind of pretty far away from the body. As you press that bar up, or press those dumbbells up, what happens to the pit of that arm? It comes in closer. It draws in close to the body. Well, that's adduction. That's bringing that arm in. So you're still, of course, working the chest very effectively. But now, if you've already done the fly move and taken the chest to failure there, you'll find that when you get on the press move, you're not going to hit your max, but you're going to get more chest work out of it by working your triceps and using your triceps and using your shoulders to finish the move. Now, I was talking a minute ago about direction of that. So when we're doing that, if we're trying to work that upper chest, we usually think of an incline bench press. And actually, on an incline bench press, you are doing this type of an angle. But we want to make that arm move in that northeast to north direction. Like I was saying earlier, the top part of that chest muscle, those fibers run from south to southeast, I guess you'd say, to northeast. And so I want to do kind of an upward arm movement as I do a fly. Think of bringing your arm from your pocket up across your body to your opposing shoulder. That kind of a move. I want to really want to hit the upper chest. I'm going to do that kind of a fly. So the exercise I recommend on that is actually a cable fly when you're pulling the cables from the bottom and going up in front of you, like you're clapping your hands with your arms straight out in front of you, but trying to bring it high enough to be up higher than your nose. Make sure you're going from a southeast direction up to a northeast direction. That's going to work more that upper chest if that's what you're going for. Also, believe it or not, of course, working an incline bench works that upper chest, but if you wanted to do a little bit more for lower chest development, a lot of people are doing that because they're looking for that division. They want to create that shelf, that upside down shelf over their abdominals. So they want that definition. Well, in order to get that, you're going to work the lower part of your chest muscle, which is lower part of your pectoralis major. And most people would go to a decline bench. But a minute ago, I was starting with believe it or not. Believe it or not, you're looking for a motion that's a little bit different than that upper motion I was telling you about a minute ago, where you're bringing your hands from your pockets up in front of you and clapping your hands higher than your nose out in front of you. You're going to do a different move than with the upper chest. You're going to do more of a downward move. Now, of course, you get this kind of downward motion when you do a decline bench, and we know that when that's a pretty common exercise for the lower chest. But think of the downward movement I'm thinking of is basically taking your fist, bend your arms back, pull your fist up beside your chest, just like you're in the bottom part of a close grip chest press. Start there and then push more down towards your legs almost. Not straight down, but down and out in front of you. Now that kind of motion, that's what's working that bottom part of that chest. That's the way those fibers run. So when you're working, trying to get that definition, trying to really accentuate those lower pecs, that's when the dip comes in. That's when doing dip type exercises will really, really target that lower chest. And you'll see people doing dips where they're sitting straight up, or they're leaning forward. In this motion, you actually want to be leaning forward into it and actually pressing down. Now, I started off with believe it or not a minute ago, and I was actually going to be talking about something else, but the believe it or not that I was mentioning, a very effective way to work the lower part of the chest. And I would recommend doing this as more of a finishing exercise. After you've done decline bench or you've done a cable exercise for the lower chest, I'll tell you that in a minute, you can actually do the tricep bar, take a straight tricep bar and do a tricep press down the incorrect way. Now, I know that sounds funny, but I remember seeing people do this years ago, and they were actually trying to lift a lot of weight with the tricep exercise. So they'd get on a cable machine, and they'd rack it up real heavy, and they would grab the bar, and they would let their elbows flare out to the side. They would lean over as far as they could, and they would push that entire weight stack up and down. about 5 times. They do 3 sets, then they go complain to management that the weight stack wasn't heavy enough. Well, actually, they were trying to work triceps, but believe it or not, what they were working is they were working the lower chest, because that move is very similar to the dip. So grabbing the bar, a straight bar, like you're going to do a tricep press down, hooked to the cable machine. Of course, the bar's hooked to the top part of the cable machine. And lean over, like you would lean over for your dips. Let your elbows flare out, holding the edge of that bar, and press it straight down. Now, of course, you're going to get tricep involvement there, which is, again, why I would recommend doing it after doing some decline bench, or better yet, even a cable type motion. And a cable type motion for the decline for the lower part of the chest is more your standard cable fly when the cables are starting at the top, are set up from the top, and you're actually flying going down and across the chest, and actually ending up below the chest, bringing your arms together. They're not right out in front of you, not over the upper chest, a little bit more on the lower chest. That would actually be a cable movement for the lower part of the chest. But then finishing with either a dip or that cable press move I was speaking about a minute ago. Now, if time is a great concern, you're looking to a quick workout. And I can understand that. As I tell most people, the workout, in order to be effective, it's got to work for your head. And if you're planning hour-and-a-half workouts and the structure of it keeps you from doing it, in other words, I don't have an hour-and-a-half day, there's no way I can go do that, or the detail is really just boring you to tears, and you're wanting to get a quicker workout in, or you're short on time, well, standard flat bench or standard fly. But anyway, a standard flat bench for a press move or a standard fly move, 3 good sets on that to failure, somewhere around 12 to 15, you're going to effectively hit the chest. These other things that I'm telling you are far more detailed. Not absolutely necessary, but far more detailed. I use them for clients that want to get a little far more detailed. I'll use them for clients that really like working the chest. But one of the challenges I have as a trainer is when I have somebody that really likes working a certain muscle, I usually have a lot of difficulty getting them to work the backside, and it's something we spend a lot of time on. Now, for that individual, if they're a chest fanatic, I'm going to take them through that rather detailed scenario of chest exercises to hit all the different parts of the chest. We may do 7 or 8 exercises on the chest. But if I'm going to put that much detail in it, the challenge I have is to make sure I'm doing the same due diligence to the backside of the body. And I told you at the beginning of this that I have a client that has some challenges in that area. Loves working chest, but really fights, really resists doing any kind of back work. And we've taken a painstaking amount of time to explain to him, I'm more than glad to take your chest to failure in any way, shape, or form you'd like. I've got exercises galore that can develop your chest. But when he came to me, I noticed he was getting a concave look. He was getting a look of his shoulders kind of drawing in. Well, it's commonly held that a strong muscle is a tight muscle, and that you become muscle bound. Now, you've heard me speak about that absurd idea quite some time ago. It's not that the chest is so tight. It's just that the back is so weak. And that can actually give you bad posture and actually start to force you to lean over. One of the many things that can cause you to start to lean over. So, but if you see somebody that has their shoulders drawn in, it's usually because of weak back muscles. And I'm going to do a podcast on posture, and I'll talk about the importance of the serratus muscle in that exercise. But in this particular scenario, especially with this client and other clients, I make deals with them. If we're going to do this detailed on the chest, then you've got to allow me to be that detailed on the back. I can't just do 8 different variations on the chest and go 3 sets of lat pull down and call it a day. We've got to make sure that we're doing the right amount of opposing development, the development of the opposing muscle, in order to balance out the body. If not, we're going to cause a back pull. We're going to cause back pain. Anytime you strengthen one side of the body and don't strengthen the other side to match, you're going to end up with muscle pulls, which is why we have so many pulled hamstrings in athletes and in weekends warriors and the like. It's because of not training the hamstrings as hard as we train the quadriceps and glutes. This isn't a complicated muscle. I mean, there's really 2 parts to it. You can get really detailed if you want to. I can sit here and bore you to tears with the science of all that. But The pectoralis major is not a super detailed muscle. The reason we probably spend so much time on it goes to the obsession that I stated at the beginning of this. I shouldn't say that, but I don't mean that in a negative way. I really don't. Though, how do you not mean that in a negative way, Garrett? Well, I don't know. I don't really mean it in a negative way because I'm passionate about working my back. That happens to be something that I would work day in and day out if I don't take time and focus in on my workout, make sure I'm balanced out. But because we are so excited about that muscle, there's tons of exercises that we've developed, machines that we've developed, variations of benches that we've developed to work that muscle. But don't let that make you think that the muscle is extremely complex and very difficult to move. You can work it extremely effectively doing push-ups. If you really want to get that adduction in, which I highly recommend, when you're doing a push-up, at the very top of the movement, when you push all the way up, try to turn your shoulders towards one direction. You're going to turn it into one arm and away from the other arm. Now, you're not going to get a big turn here unless you pull the other hand off the ground, which I don't want you to do. But just do a slight shoulder turn. Try to twist it as much as you can. Lower yourself back down, press back up, and twist to the other side. Now, think about this. If I'm twisting that chest muscle into my arm, what muscle's doing that work? Well, of course, it's the pectoralis major. Remember I said there was a twisting motion involved with it? What is happening is you're actually trying to pull your arm in. The only thing is your arm is locked on the floor, so therefore your body turns. And by firing or making yourself do that turn, you'll get that adduction. You'll really hit that pectoralis minor. But you'll really get good development there and cause that outer chest to really develop, really grow. But again, this can be done simply because it's not a complicated muscle. If you have any questions about putting a routine like that together, if you want to get super detailed about how you work your chest, or any muscle for that matter, feel free to reach out to me at Garrett@personaledgefitness.com, or contact me on our website at personaledgefitness.com, Facebook page is the same one, or call me at our mobile location at 251-341-0927. Hey guys, pectoralis major and how to develop it. Just one way we help you find your own level of wellness. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the Personal Edge Fitness Podcast with Garrett Williamson. Subscribe now and be a part of the show by calling 251-278-EDGE or message us on Facebook and Instagram at Personal Edge Fitness or at Team PE on Twitter, and visit us at personaledgefitness.com.